على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. We continue in Buloogh Al-Maraam by the great illustrious Imam Ahmad bin Ali ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, who died 852 after Hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wassalam. Well, this day is Sunday, February the 24th, 4:11 p.m., which is in direct correlation with the month that we continue, or we're still in, Jumad al-Akhirah, or 18 Jumad al-Akhirah, the 18th of the month on the Hijri calendar, which is called Jumad al-Akhirah, what some of them call it Jumad al-Thani, and the year 1440 of after the migration of the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam. We continue in the hadith on the chapter of Kitab al-Nikah. We were discussing the narration of Abu Hurairah that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said about the man if he calls his wife ila firashihi فأبت أن تجيء فبات غضبان لعنتها الملائكة حتى تصبح. He says that a man, if he was to call his wife to the firash, notice that the Messenger of Allah used firash. He didn't use words that were explicit or vulgar. Rather, the Messenger of Allah used with the words that showed and displays some shyness. So he said to the firash, meaning to the bed or to the quarters in which one sleeps. Rather, the firash, as we know, is like the mattress or the bed in which one sleeps in. The firash is also used for other words in the Arabic language, such as furniture, or things that you lay on the ground, or things that you sit on. But to notice that the Messenger of Allah used the word, like we said, on many occasions you'll find that the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, that he used words to show things of honor and chivalry. That they were not vulgar or explicit speech, or speech that may have displayed some type of uncomfortability. But rather he came with speech to show and encourage us also likewise to do similar. To sometimes, of course, when we speak to certain people in certain ways, to try to come with words that shows and displays kindness and shyness, or shows shyness for that matter. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, إِذَا دَعَا إِلَى فِرَاشِهِ, to the firash, to the place where one sleep, and she refuses to come. And he comes upon the night, or he remains upon the night, angry and upset, that the angels curse her until the morning time. We also mentioned it said, he says that the one who's above the heavens will remain sakhitan alayha, remain angry upon her, or angry against her, until her husband is pleased with her. We were discussing the benefits of this hadith, and from them is the establishment that Allah is above the heavens. As you'll find in this narration, it gathers between both characteristics. As far as the characteristics of Allah, we said in the last class, breaks down to two categories. The category of what they call as-sifat al-dhatiyah, the characteristic of Allah's essence, and the characteristics of Allah's actions. We said that the characteristics of Allah Ta'ala's essence are characteristics that Allah Ta'ala, that He possesses, subhanahu, what He has, tabaraka wa ta'ala, and they are characteristics that have no beginning to them, nor any ending. They're characteristics that have no beginning, and they have no ending. And there are characteristics, and these characteristics, which are called characteristics of His that, of His essence, that He will never stop, and He will always continue to have those characteristics. That He will not cease to have. Rather, He will always continue to have those characteristics. And that is the meaning of sifatul that, meaning sifatun qadimatun azaliyatun qidamat that qa'imatun bi dhati Allahi tabaraka wa ta'ala. Their sifat, qadimatun. Their characteristics, when they say qadima, characteristics of absolute oldness. When we say meaning absolute oldness, meaning there's no beginning to it. There's no beginning. So that's the meaning of the word qadima. The word qadima means absolute oldness, meaning there's no beginning. There's no beginning. Also, the azaliya abadiyya. Azaliya meaning that likewise is emphasis to put on the word qadima. Meaning it's the first, there's no beginning to it. And abadiyya means that there'll be last, meaning there's no ending to it, meaning they're eternal. So the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence are characteristics that Allah will continue to have and He will never cease to have. Rather, He will continue to have. He will never stop having those characteristics of absolute oldness, meaning no beginning. And they're qadimatun, azaliyatun, qidam al-dhat, qa'imatun bi-dhatillahi tabarak wa ta'ala. Meaning that Allah tabarak wa ta'ala possesses those characteristics. For example, Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, based upon this hadith here, affirms of His essence, the characteristic of aboveness or highness or loftiness, which is called the ulu. The ulu, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the creation, meaning He Himself in His essence. He is above the creation. And the creation are underneath. And Allah is above everything, above His creation. Allah Ta'ala is above the creation. And that characteristic of what they call ulu, ayn, lam, wow. That characteristic of ulu, of aboveness, is a characteristic of Allah's essence. That never goes away. That characteristic is a characteristic of His essence. He will always continue and He will never cease to have that characteristic. Allah Ta'ala, when He descends at the last part of the night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still above His creation. Allah is never mixed with His creation, where the creation are mixed with Him and He is mixed with the creation. That is the belief of the Sufiya. That is the belief of the deviant sect, the Sufiya, who believe that the creation are one with Allah and Allah is one with the creation, which is absolutely wicked and evil. So we said that the characteristic of ulu is a characteristic of His essence. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes on the day of resurrection, He will still be above the creation. And when Allah ta'ala descends, He is still above the creation. And when He comes on the day of resurrection to judge between His ibad, between the servants, He is still above His creation, tabaraka wa ta'ala. From the characteristic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence is the characteristic, for example, of what they call sama' or sami', that Allah wa ta'ala, that He hears everything, that He sees everything, that He hears everything and He sees everything, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also is able to do everything, and also His eternal life, Haya or Hayat, which is life, and also Allah Ta'ala's knowledge, and Allah Ta'ala's hikmah, His wisdom. All these are examples of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence. Also, for example, Allah Ta'ala having a face, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala having the two hands, the two eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all those are characteristics of His essence. Meaning, There's never a time from the times they are except that Allah continue and will continue eternally and always having these characteristics. It doesn't stop. And we're going to talk about the difference between the two categories. Don't worry. Taib. So those are examples of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence. His knowledge, his hikmah, what he wills, what he wants, him being able to all hearing, all seeing, all aware, having the hands, the face. All these characteristics are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence. And they're eternal. And they have no beginning and they have no ending. Taib. You have the second category, which is called the characteristics of Allah Ta'ala's actions. What they call صفات فعلية وصفات فعلية اختيارية تتعلق بها مشيئته وقدرته. You'll find that the second category is Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's actions. Allah Ta'ala's actions. And that the actions of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala are فعل فعله الله. That action that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala does when He wills. He does it when He wills. From those characteristics of His actions, for example, descension, ascension, coming on the day of resurrection, ascension above the Arsh. Allah is the one that created the heavens and the earth and then everything between it. Then Allah particularized the Arsh with aboveness or loftiness, meaning ascending above it, ascending above the Arsh. So ascension, descension, coming on the day of resurrection, folding, and gripping the heavens and the earth on the day of resurrection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gathering the heavens and the earth on the day of resurrection upon of His finger. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gripping and taking people out of the hellfire, as it comes in the narrations. That Allah will grip a people and pull them out of hell. He Himself, He will pull them out of hell, certain people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not make us amongst those who enter the hellfire. But on the day of resurrection, there will be people that Allah will take out the hellfire. And the Prophet ﷺ said, حَتَّى لَمْ يَبْقَى إِلَّا أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ فَيَقْبِضُ قَبْضَةً فَيُخْرِجُ بِهَا أَقْوَامًا لَمْ يَعْمَلُوا خَيْرًا قَطْ قَدْ عَادُوا حَمَمًا. As it comes in Sahih Muslim. That the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that Allah, there will be no one else to save the inhabitants of hell, meaning those who will be brought out from those who had an Adam's weight of faith, of those who had Tawheed. He said there will be no one left except Arham al-Rahimin. But the point of reference in the hadith, it says, فَيَقْبِدُ قَبْضَةً, that Allah will grip a grip. Isn't that not an action? That's an action. Allah will grip a grip. And He says in the message of Allah in the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri al-Ma'ruf, that Allah will remove by that grip people who have been totally burned up to cinders and tortured and burnt up. He said, فَيُخْرِجُ بِهَا أَقْوَامًا لَمْ يَعْمَلُوا خَيْرًا قَطْ. People will be brought out, they didn't do any good, and they were burnt to cinders. And they were totally burnt up and tortured. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve us. Taib. So all these are to show the second category. The second category, and there's other evidences. That's just one couple examples, but they're more than that. Way more than that. Taib. The message of Allah, the second category is the sifat al-fi'liyah, the characteristics of Allah's actions. The characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions. You might hear in certain books where people say as-sifat al-fi'liyah al-ikhtiyariyah. Al-ikhtiyariyah. The word al-ikhtiyariyah meaning voluntary. Voluntary actions. That word ikhtiyariyah is only brought for clarification. Not for the fact that it has any what they call a mafhum or mukhalafat al-mafhum. As we know, of course, I'm certain that certain people have studied when they were in school that the actions of the human being break down to two types. The actions of the human being. We're not talking about Allah. The actions of the human being are called harakat ikhtiyariya wa harakat idtirariya. Idtirariya. Actions that are voluntary and actions that are involuntary. Or movements that are voluntary and movements that are involuntary. For example, actions that are voluntary, I think it's clear. That's self-explanatory, that's clear. The person wants to raise his hand or move his arm, that he volunteered to move his parts of his body or limbs of his body. Then you have actions we know of the human being that are involuntary, meaning that they never will what? They will never stop, such as the pulse in your arm or the pulse in your body, or the shaking of your hand or quivering of your hand. When you move your hand and it may shake by itself or move, or the pulsation and the beating of your heart. All those are involuntary, meaning without you even doing it, it still moves. You have no choice. And if they was to stop, especially the heart, then one would die. So those actions are what they call, as far as the human being, they break down what they call voluntary and involuntary actions. That's for the human being. However, this understanding of the human being is not applicable for Allah, as far as breaking it down to those two categories. Rather, it's only one category, which is that all of the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are actions that are done where Allah ta'ala wanted to do that action. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His infinite wisdom, wanted to do that action. That Allah created the heavens and the earth, and between it, then He particularized and specified the arsh and the throne with istiwa, with the ascension of ascending above it. So the word ikhtiyariya in the Arabic language, you'll find that some Ahl al-Ilm do mention that when they mention the actions of Allah. You'll find that they say the second category, the characteristics of Allah, are sifat al-fi'liya al-ikhtiyariya. Ikhtiyari meaning voluntary actions. Why? Because all of the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are voluntary. There are no such thing as actions that are forced upon Allah, or Allah didn't have no choice in. That's only for the human being. That's why you'll find that they say that if a person just mentioned what they say, as-sifat al-fi'liya, the characteristics of Allah's actions, and they suffice with that, that would be enough. That would be enough in that category. If you just said the second category of the actions of Allah are sifat fi'liya, the characteristics of Allah's actions, that's adequate. That's enough. You do not have to add the word ikhtiyariya, voluntary. But if one does add that word, then realize that there's no what? Mafhum. There's no meaning, the opposite meaning of what you would think. Meaning there's no such thing as involuntary actions of Allah. There's no such thing. That doesn't exist. Meaning that word ikhtiyari, meaning voluntary, was only brought for clarification. That's it. No more, no less. So if you hear in some of the books of what people write, they say sifat fi'liya ikhtiyariya. Ikhtiyari meaning voluntary. That word was only brought for clarification. That's it. To clarify and put emphasis on what was mentioned. But if a person wanted to suffice by saying the sifat of Allah that are of His actions, and he stopped, that would suffice. That would be adequate. If he says sifat fi'liya, that's enough. But if you added ikhtiyariya for more emphasis and clarification, there's no problem. With the consideration that no one should not understand that the actions of Allah break down, for example, into voluntary or involuntary. All the actions of Allah are ikhtiyari. They are all done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's choice. There are no such thing as actions that are forced upon Allah or Allah did not have no choice in. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? The actions of Allah ta'ala Also, it's incumbent upon one, as far as the second category, to believe that they are actions that they happen from one time to the next. يتجدد. That the actions of Allah Ta'ala, that they happen from one time to the next. And they're not azali in the majority of characteristics, except characteristic of kalam and a couple of others. But the majority of the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are actions that are done from one time to the next. If not all of them, excuse me. I don't want to confuse everyone. Keep it straight, keep it like this. All the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of them are happen from one time to the next. They happen from one time to the next. The example of that is the descension of Allah. The descension of Allah, the message of Allah clearly mentioned in the hadith. Hadith which is in the most utmost of authenticity. In which you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah wrote a whole book on it. It's called Sifatul Nuzul, the affirmation of Allah's descension. Shaykh al-Islam has a whole book on this. At any rate, the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends fi thuluth al-layl al-akhir, on the third last part of the night. And then when the sun rises, then that action what? That action, it stops, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it again on another night. Then it what? It stops when the sun comes up, then another night. It continuously happens every night. And the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he bounded it to a certain time when it happens. Meaning it does not happen all day and all night. Only at a specific time. The message of Allah made that clear. He said, fi thuluthul layl al-akhir, on the third last part of the night, this when this happens. So, characteristic of Allah's action that happens, it's an action that Allah does when He wills. And I'm going to say this, and it's a reason why I'm saying this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does an action. And you'll find that Ahl Ilm mention this, you'll find that the Salaf says this statement, Allah does an action. If He wills, like He wills, in a manner, if He wills, إِذَا شَاء وَكَمَا شَاء وَكَيْفَ شَاء وَمَتَى شَاء. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does these actions. If He wills, He does it like He wills, how He wills, and when He wills. All the actions of Allah Ta'ala are connected with His mashi'ah, with His will. They're all connected with His will. And that's when you say the statement, Allah descends if He wills, like He wills, how He wills, when He wills. Or that Allah Ta'ala, likewise, of course He ascended above the Arsh, that Allah will come on the day of resurrection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come on the day of resurrection. If He wills, like He wills, how He wills, and when He wills. When we know on the day of resurrection, that's when the coming will come. So He has actualized when He will come, the time that it will happen. Which also brings us to know that the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they happen at a certain time. As we know, the characteristic of Majid, of Allah coming, will not happen until the day of resurrection. Does that mean Allah has came, that He's come now? No, it didn't happen yet. It will happen at a time. That time is the day of resurrection. So all the actions of Allah Ta'ala, as we said, they're connected with His will. They're connected with His will, and they happen from one time to the next. They happen from one time to the next. يحصل في وقت دون وقت. They happen from one time to the next. Such as, for example, another example, and I'm going to keep going. Such as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taking the heavens and the earths and putting them in his grip. وَالْأَرْضُ جَمِيعًا قَبَضَتُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتُ مَطْوِيَّاتٌ بِيَمِينِهِ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Zumar, He says they did not glorify Allah as He deserves to be glorified. And the earth and the heavens, وَالْأَرْضُ جَمِيعًا قَبَضَتُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, that all of the earth will be in His grip on the day of resurrection. That grip of the heavens, of the earth being in His grip will not happen until what? Allah clearly said it when it was going to happen, on the day of resurrection. وَالسَّمَاوَاتُ مَطْوِيَّاتٌ بِيَمِينِهِ, and all of the seven heavens will be rolled up in His right hand. That will not occur, that action will not happen until what? Until the day of resurrection. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's action, like we mentioned and said, is connected with His will. It's connected with His will. And it happens from one time to the next. And that's real important to understand that point. Or else, if you say that no, Allah does these actions all the time, that agrees with the deviant methodology of the Mu'tazila and other than them. This we'll talk about later, inshallah. We said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions are connected with His will, and that they happen from one time to the next. Another example of this characteristic, which comes in this hadith in your books, everyone. If you look in your books, it says, the one who's above the heavens is angry with her. Angry or angry. The characteristic of what they call sakhat or ghadab of Allah, or Allah Ta'ala hates, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry, or anger. This is another characteristic of the second category, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions. So keep in mind that, as I said a couple of minutes ago, we said that the actions of Allah are connected with His will. And that's the statement of the Salaf, where they say that Allah, for example, loves who He wills, how He wills, when He wills, in the manner He wills, and how He wills, and when He wills. Notice all those are in perfect what? Sequence. Allah descends if He wills, how He wills, when He wills. Allah hates if He wills, how He wills, when He wills. Allah will grip on the day of resurrection, the heavens and the earth, if He wills, how He wills, when He wills. Allah Ta'ala will put all the seven heavens in the seven heavens in His right hand, when He wills, if He wills, how He wills. That's all correct. Now I'm going to switch it up and put it to the first category. Is it correct for me if I said to everyone, Allah has knowledge when He wills, how He wills, if He wills? Is that correct? No, it isn't. So you see the difference between what? The characteristics of His essence and the characteristics of His what? Actions. That you'll see that they're not in sequence. For example, if I said about the characteristics of Allah's essence, Allah has knowledge when He wills. Is that correct? No, it isn't. Allah has absolute wisdom when He wills. Is that correct? Is that correct? J. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above His creation when He wills. His aboveness. He's above His creation when He wills. Is that correct? Is that correct? I said the aboveness of Allah, of His essence, it never goes away. Do not have any reluctancy in the aboveness of Allah, ever. Allah is always above, all the time. When Allah descends, when He comes on the day of resurrection, anytime, Allah is always above. That's a characteristic of His essence. So if I said to everyone, Allah is above when He wills, is that correct? No. Allah hears when He wills. He hears when He wills. Is that correct? Allah sees when He wills. Is that correct? No. Those are characteristics of Allah's essence. There's never a time when the time they are except that Allah hears everything. He sees everything. So that's a part of His essence. It's another example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's light, everlasting life. Allah lives when He wills. Is that correct? Ahsant. All the characteristics of Allah's essence, you will never find and say that's connected with His will. Although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a face when He wills. Is that correct? Allah has hands when He wills. Is that correct? All these affairs are what? Incorrect. So you say that these characteristics of His actions are connected with His will. That's why we say Allah descends. If He wills, how He wills, when He wills. Allah is angry with whom He wills, how He wills, and when He wills. Everything is in perfect what? Sequence, and that's why you say that all these characteristics of Allah's actions are connected with His what? With His what, everyone? With His will. And like we said, they happen from one time to the next. They happen from one time to the next. يحصل في وقت دون وقت ويتجدد. You'll find the Ahl al-Ilm say that they renew, meaning that they happen from one time to the next. They happen from one time to the next. The actions of Allah Ta'ala, likewise we said, are connected with His will, and it happens from one time to the next. And we said that the characteristic of Allah's anger is from those characteristics of His actions. They're from as-sifat al-fi'liyah. They're from those sifat al-fi'liyah that happens at a specific time, and at one time it can stop and it can change to what? No, excuse me. It can stop. I'm going to use the word change because it changes. Leave that word change. That it can what? Stop from what? From anger, and then Allah Ta'ala can love of ibad. For example, at a specific time, a person is upon shirk and upon polytheism and upon kufr and disbelief. And at particular time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, is angry with His abd. Then when that person becomes Muslim, he becomes Muslim and he embraces Islam and he makes tawbah, then Allah ta'ala will love him. So that action had to happen at a particular time. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved him. I don't want everyone to say change. Leave the word change because we don't use the word change in regards to Allah. Because the word change is a word that the people bid'ah came to cause confusion. But anyway, so we say in regards that the word sakhat, or anger of Allah, or the hatred of Allah, because Allah hates likewise. And the sakhat, or the anger of Allah, or the ghadab, or the anger, or the wrath of Allah, all have been affirmed in Kitab and Sunnah. We'll find that ayahs where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, فَلَمَّا آسَفُونَا انْتَقَمْنَا مِنْهُمْ. When they angered us, we took retribution from them, meaning we sent the punishment down on them. So notice that it says فَلَمَّا آسَفُونَا, meaning at the time when they committed an act, at a specific time, they did an act which caused what? The anger of Allah to be upon them. Meaning before that, they were under the rahmah of Allah and the pleasure of Allah, and Allah loved them. But at a particular time, they did an act which caused the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to what? To now descend upon them. Which also shows that the time or the characteristics, or these characteristics happens from one time to the next. When the abd or the slave does an action that will cause the love of Allah ta'ala to now be upon him, then that's when it happens. And when the slave of the abd does an action that might anger of Allah will descend upon him, it's when it happens. Happens from one time to the next. Is it clear what I'm saying so far, sisters? طيب. The actions of Allah, such as, for example, the sakhat of Allah, that Allah hates certain acts. As we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, Inna Allah yuhibbu al-muttaqeen wa la yuhibbu al-kafirin. Allah says that clearly in his book. He says he loves the muttaqeen and he hates the kafirin. All these ayats are clear in the book of Allah. And the effect of it is in order for what? In us to abstain from certain acts that will cause him to hate certain things. And to now expose or show ourselves to acts that will earn his love. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves tawheed and he hates shirk. And he loves sunnah and he detests and hates bid'ah. And he loves ta'ah. He loves obedience and those who obey him, and he loves the muti'een. He loves those who obey him, and he detests and he hates al-isyan or ma'siyah and the usah. And he detests the what? Disobedience of those who disobey him. This is clear. For those who have a fitrah salima, a natural disposition, and has not been affected by philosophy and the ideologies of the deviant sects who have been affected by philosophy, this is clear. This is clear as the sun in the sky, without us going knee deep. The reason why people now have to go deep, because a lot of the Muslims have been affected in these affairs, which are considered the foundation. That's the reason why we now have to start explaining in detail these type of principles, so one does not get affected in his aqeedah. But for one to hear this is clear. Allah loves certain acts and he detests certain acts. That he loves obedience and he hates disobedience. And that he loves the muttaqeen and he hates the kafirin. All this is clear. Simple. The problem, like we said, is when the people now started to deviate and they started to come with false principles to confuse the people and to confuse them in their aqeedah, is when Ahl Ilm had to come with these principles and these details. That if it wasn't for the fact that the satanic call of deviance and philosophy started to now affect the people's belief system, then the ulama went ahead and had to come with these principles in order to defend the correct belief. But due to the fact that Shaitan sent his soldiers with these type of corruptive ideologies and words and statements that cause confusion, then Ahl Ilm had to come with these principles of clarification so the correct belief can remain intact and clear. So the correct belief of Kitab and Sunnah can be sustained and maintained so everyone could be upon the correct path. That's the reason why we come with these principles. So the principle, like we said, from the second category is called anger of Allah. The anger of Allah. And that's mentioned in this hadith if everyone looks in their books. It says that the one who's above the heavens will be angry with her. Angry with the woman who will what? Disobey her husband. This is another hadith to prove and show everyone that the anger of Allah Ta'ala did not happen until when? Until she disobeyed her husband. Before that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was pleased with her, for example. Or he was pleased with her and he loved her and Allah Ta'ala had his mercy on her. However, at a particular time, she did an act which was the reason for what, everyone? The anger of Allah to what? To now descend upon her. That act was due to what? Her disobedience of what? Of her husband. This is another hadith to affirm that the actions of Allah happen from one time to the next. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Jay. This is simple. And you'll find that the kalam of the Salafis is easy to embrace, is easy to understand for a person whose fitrah or his natural disposition has not been tampered with or altered or tainted by the ideologies of philosophy and the ideologies of the Greeks, who's the main founders of the philosophy methodology, and those who have been affected by it from the deviant sects of the Muslims. So we said that we're going to now put these actions in all one category. Meaning they're all the actions of Allah. For example, sakhat, the anger of Allah. Or the ghadab. Ghadab also means wrath. They say ghadab also means anger. Ghadab means anger. Sakhat means wrath. And karaha or kurh, Allah hating certain affairs. All three of those characteristics are considered the actions of Allah, and that they happen from one time to the next. We'll also bring the opposite of that. For example, the mahabba of Allah, the love of Allah, or the rahmah of Allah, and the rida, the rida of Allah, Allah being pleased with certain affairs. Those three, likewise, are considered sifat fi'liyah, considered the actions of Allah. So the love of Allah, the mercy of Allah, and the rida, Allah's pleasure, or Him being pleased, also are the actions, or the characteristics of His actions. Is it clear so far what I'm saying, everyone? Is it clear what I'm saying so far? I heard some people say no. They said no? Okay, G. Now you'll find that we'll bring what is correct is that Ahlus Sunnah affirms these characteristics. Okay, everyone? We affirm these characteristics and the effect that it has. I'm going to bring clarification on what I'm saying. We affirm all these characteristics. They're the characteristics of Allah's actions. Now, the characteristics of Allah's actions. These characteristics you'll find, brothers and sisters, also agree with certain characteristics that we know of the human being. As far as, and I'm making this clear, and I want everyone to listen to what I'm saying and focus on these words. As far as the wording and the general meaning before the takhsis, before they are connected with each other and they're specified in the context. Write that down because that is important. These characteristics such as sakhat, ghadab, karaha, mahabba, rida, rahmah, the pleasure of Allah, the mercy of Allah, the love of Allah, the anger of Allah, the wrath of Allah, and the hatred of Allah. And the hatred of Allah. That the human being has those characteristics and they agree only in the wording and the general meaning. Before the takhsis, before the connection of the two takes place, meaning that which is done in the mind. Because everything outside the mind is mukhtas. Everything is connected with each other and there's no similarity. We're talking about before the context in the sentence, generally. That the characteristic agrees only in the general meaning and in the what? The general meaning and the wording. That's it. Before the takhsis takes place. The takhsis meaning they're particularized when they're connected, basically. And that's only in the mind, of course. Meaning that you find just as Allah has mercy. Doesn't the creation have mercy? Doesn't the creation have pleasure? Are they pleased with certain things? Doesn't the creation have love? Doesn't the creation have anger? Doesn't the creation have wrath? Doesn't the creation also detest and hate certain things? Am I right or wrong? Don't they have all those characteristics? Yes, they do. That's the reason why you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam made it clear about these characteristics. He says that the agreements with these characteristics that you hear, that they're similar in, as far as what you hear with the creator and the creation, the agreements only takes place in the love and the wording and al-mutlaq al-kulli and the general meaning. That's it. before the idafa or the connection or the specialization takes or the specification takes place, there they only agree and in the wording and the general meaning. But after you say, for example, ghadab Allah, now you connected the word ghadab or anger to Allah and ghadab al-makhluq and the anger of the creation, there is no similarity after you connected after you connected them in the what? In the context. Before the context, they agree in the wording and the general meaning. After the connection, there is no similarity. Because everything now becomes specified of what befits it. Whereas the anger of Allah befits the creator and the anger of the creation befits the creation, and there's no similarity therein after they've been what? Connected in the sentence or in the context. There isn't any similarity. Do I need to explain that again? Or was it clear? Or is everyone with me? Now, as far as the love of Allah, the pleasure of Allah, and the rahmah of Allah, the anger of Allah, the wrath of Allah, and the hatred of Allah, all those characteristics are sifat fi'liyah. They happen from one time to the next. As we said, they happen from one time to the next. Those characteristics we affirm, and I'm making this clear, we affirm the characteristic along what will be the athar, what will be the result of it. I'm saying this for a reason. Trust me. I know what I'm doing because I'm about to mention something else that's going to go against it. Then it's going to become clear. We affirm the characteristic along with the result of the effect of that characteristic, meaning if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves one, loves his slave, and he's pleased with him, he will what? He will honor him. He will bestow a blessing upon him, and he will give him a reward. That reward is the result of him, tabarak wa ta'ala, the result or the effect of the characteristic of love. If he loves his slave, he will enter him to paradise, or he will give him a reward. That's clear. Because we know that only Allah tabarak wa ta'ala will give a reward for those who he loves. And he will enter into paradise those who he loves, those who he is pleased with, and those who he has his mercy upon. That's clear. It doesn't take, like we said, a genius to understand this. If Allah gives a person a reward, that means he gives and enters them into paradise, that means all three of these characteristics, what? Allah tabarak wa ta'ala loved him, Allah had mercy upon him, and he was pleased with him. So the result of it in the end was what, everyone? A reward, or for example, likewise, paradise. Or Allah honoring him, or Allah bestowing a blessing upon him. Is it clear or is it not clear? Is it clear or is it not clear? Same thing on the opposite side. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he gives a punishment to one, especially in the hereafter, if he punishes him, in the hereafter, of course, entering him in the hellfire, Allah, and also humiliation and disgrace, especially in the hereafter, entering the hellfire, that means that Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, he's angry with him, his wrath was upon him, and tabarak wa ta'ala, he hated him, which came as a result of it, his adhab, his punishment. So not only does Ahlul Sunnah affirm that characteristic, also likewise the final what? Ultimate result of that characteristic, or what it affects. What will be the ultimate result? There's a reason why I'm saying this. And then when I come with the opposite, then everyone will what? See what I'm talking about. Type. The last thing I'm going to add on to this, because now I'm going to start to bring some of the deviant ideologies of the Asha'ira and the Mu'tazila. You have a characteristic which is called irada, which is from Allah's essence. There's a characteristic of Allah's essence, not the first category. The first category. called irada. Iradatun. Irada. Irada means what Allah, what He wants, or what He intends, or what He wants, what Allah wants. That's a part of His characteristics of His essence. Of His essence. Sifat al-irada is a characteristic of Allah's essence. What Allah wants. A person would say, where is that in Kitab al-Sunnah? Allah clearly says that. Fa'alun lima yurid. Yurid. Irada. Allah constantly does what He wants. Meaning that the actions of Allah are connected to what? To irada, what He wants. So what He wants is a part of His essence. Excuse me, astaghfirullah. What He wants is from His essence, from the characteristics of His essence. Leave off the word part. That was the slip of the tongue. It's what? It's from His essence. You have to be very careful when you speak about these type of words. Because these words, especially that Ahl Bid'ah use, sometimes the slip of the tongue happens while we're speaking, and it's one of those words that the people of innovation use. And the word part is one of those words that cause confusion, that they used. Type. So the word sifatul al-irada, what Allah wants, what He intends, is from His characteristics of His what, everyone? His actions. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about because I'm about to bring you to a certain point. Type. So now that we established the correct belief of Ahlul Sunnah now, we have now laid it down. That's the correct belief. Now I'm going to bring something that opposes it. So when you hear this nonsense, you'll know it's incorrect. Just as we teach what's the khair, what's the good, and what's the haqq, we also bring some of what is incorrect so you can know the beauty of the truth and you can recognize the evil when you hear it. So you can reject it and stay away from it. And that's the minhaj of Ahlul Sunnah. We teach the good and we teach the what? The bad, in order for the people to stay away from it. And so when they hear it, they can avoid it. That's why when we teach Sunnah, we teach Bid'ah. And when we teach what? When we teach Tawheed, we teach what shirk is. So you can now know what it is. So you can stay away from it. So you can avoid it. See how the minhaj of Kitab al-Sunnah is perfect. It's clear. And it makes a lot of sense. The order for me to know what something of evil is, I have to know what it is and hear it so I can avoid it. So now we're going to bring something that opposes that methodology. We just laid down. Wow, it's 5 o'clock already? Sheesh. Wow. SubhanAllah out there. Yeah, a couple more minutes and that's it. Matter of fact, I'll stop here. Because this is going to get confusing a little bit. And I want everybody's mind to be on focus or running on all cylinders when we started. We'll stop here, inshallah. Right, so that origin that we laid down, is that clear, everyone? Does anyone have any questions? Sisters have any questions? Sure there isn't any questions. If it's not, then like I said, I'll repeat anything we mentioned. So just an extra